Good day, everyone, and to you, Sir. At this time, I'm going to discuss the Chapter 4 Socioeconomic Conditions of the Indigenous Groups in the Philippines. So, let's talk all about the traditional lifestyle of indigenous groups in the Philippines. So, traditional lifestyle among Philippine indigenous communities are defined by unique cultural practices, social structures, and sustainable living methods reflecting a deep connection to the land. So, they are very interconnected sa ilang land. So, these communities practice subsistence agriculture using techniques like Sweden agriculture and intercropping and rely on fishing and hunting. So the Philippine indigenous communities are relying on sa farming, nag-rely sila sa fishing and hunting. And they operate within clan-based structures led by elders and promoting collective responsibility. Indigenous spirituality is tied to nature, and artistic expressions convey cultural narratives. The Philippine indigenous communities or groups also face challenges include cultural erosion, environmental degradation, land rights issues, and limited access to education and healthcare. Future directions emphasize cultural revitalization, sustainable development practices, respecting indigenous knowledge, legal recognition of land rights, and education combining traditional wisdom and modern skills. So let's go through the key points of the traditional lifestyles of Philippine indigenous communities. First is the cultural heritage and identity. So traditional lifestyles are deeply interconnected with cultural heritage, forming the backbone of social structure. Preservation of unique languages, costumes, and belief systems passed down through generations provides a sense of belonging and community cohesion. Maintaining these traditions is essential for fostering pride and resilience while also nurturing relationships with ancestors and the environment. So at this point, um, it emphasized that their traditional way of life is deeply tied to their cultural heritage, which is mao ang foundation sa ilahang society. So, it involves their unique languages, costumes, and belief systems nga maoy ginapasa sa from their ancestors and then sa mga parents and then sa children and sa mga next generation pa in the future. So keeping these traditions alive, it gives them a strong sense of belonging and unity within their community. Next is the subsistence agriculture and resource management. Subsistence agriculture is a cornerstone with farming practices that prioritize sustainability and resource conservation. Methods include shifting cultivation, agroecological practices, and intercropping, allowing for crop diversity and soil restoration. Community based resource management promotes collective responsibility and cooperation to protect and utilize natural surroundings sustainably. So, this is all about how they mainly get their food and how they carefully manage their environment. So, their farming methods are designed to be sustainable and conserve resources, meaning they don't overuse or damage the land. So, ang techniques nila like shifting cultivation, agroecological practices, and intercropping help maintain diverse plant life and keep the soil healthy. And also they work together as community to manage and protect their natural surroundings responsibly. Next is the traditional knowledge systems. These systems embody an extensive understanding of the environment ecosystems and resource management practices developed over centuries. This knowledge includes insights on biodiversity, medicinal plants, seasonal patterns, and natural resource cycles, enabling communities to thrive in harmony with their surroundings. So these are the vast amounts of knowledge they've gathered over hundreds of years about their environment. So this includes deep understanding of biodiversity, medicinal plants, seasonal patterns, natural resource cycles. And this knowledge allows them to live successfully and in balance with their surroundings. Next is the spiritual and cultural practices. Spiritual beliefs play a significant role as indigenous communities view the land, water, and forest as sacred. Cultures incorporate animistic beliefs reflected in rituals that honor ancestral spirits and nature's deities, reinforcing social unity and instilling a sense of responsibility toward environmental stewardship. Spiritual beliefs are very important to indigenous communities because they see the land, water, and forest as sacred. Sumuna sa ilang tanaw. Sacred ang tanaw nila sa land, sa ilang water, and sa forest. So, their cultures often include animistic beliefs, meaning they believe spirits live in natural things. They perform rituals to honor their um, ancestral spirits, and nature's deities. So these practices strengthen their community bond and encourage them to protect their environment. The next one is community structures and social organization. Traditional lifestyles are supported by intricate community structures that facilitate governance, mutual support, and conflict resolution. Leadership is often rooted in kinship and respected elders who act as custodians of cultural knowledge and governance, ensuring that community needs and traditional values guide collective initiatives. So their traditional lifestyle are supported by complex community setups that make it easier for them to govern themselves, to support each other, and resolve conflicts. So leadership usually comes from kinship. So kinship is a family ties and respected elders. These elders are important because they protect and pass on cultural knowledge and guide a community based on traditional values. Next one is the economic practices and material culture. Traditional economic practices center around self-sufficiency, subsistence activities, and the sustainable use of natural resources. The material culture is characterized by handcrafted tools, garments, and art forms which fulfill practical needs and serve as expressions of cultural identity and artistry. So their traditional economy focuses on self-sufficiency, so being able to provide for themselves. Subsistency activities, so getting enough to live and using the natural resources sustainably. So their material culture refers to the things they make, so like handcrafted tools, garments or clothes, and art. These items are just not practical, but also to show their cultural identity and artistic skills. The next one is diet and nutrition. Traditional diets are largely based on locally sourced food, reflecting a deep connection to the land and environment. Utilizing a variety of indigenous crops and hunting and fishing practices, these communities maintain dietary diversity that supports nutritional health. So their traditional diets are mainly made up of locally sourced food. Meaning is food nga ning grow nearby sa ilaha. So this strong connection to the land helps them maintain a diverse diet with many different indigenous crops along with food from hunting and fishing, which helps them stay healthy. So another one is the challenges of modernization. Modernization poses significant challenges affecting cultural integrity and socioeconomic conditions. The introduction of external influences disrupts customary practices while land conservation infringe upon ancestral domains, leading to displacement and loss of access to vital resources. So modernization brings big problems that affect their culture and their way of life. When outside ideas and practices are introduced, they can disrupt their usual customs. So land conversation or changing ancestral lands of other uses. It takes away their traditional territories, leading to people being forced to move and losing access to important resources. Next was in the intergenerational knowledge transfer. This transfer is crucial for the survival of traditional lifestyles, ensuring the continuity of cultural practices and environmental stewardship knowledge. Elders play a central role of transmitting skills, values, and traditions to younger generations. This is very important process for their traditional lifestyle to survive. So it means it's ensuring that their cultural practices and knowledge about environmental stewardship. So taking care of their environment. Ma-continue ang pag-take care of their environment. And then elders play a central role by teaching younger generations their skills, values, and traditions. And the last key points of the traditional lifestyle is advocacy and rights recognition. So advocacy for indigenous rights and recognition of their traditional lifestyles are critical. Empowering communities through legal recognition of their ancestral lands and cultural rights is essential for sustaining their traditional lifestyle and promoting inclusivity and policy making. So, this refers to actively supporting indigenous rights and making sure their traditional ways of life are officially recognized. So, giving communities legal recognition for their ancestral lands and cultural rights is crucial. So, this helps them maintain their tradition and ensures their voices are heard in decisions that affect them. So, next, let's proceed to the topic. Next topic is farming and agriculture. Farming and agriculture are foundation to the livelihoods of Philippine indigenous communities, linked to their cultural identity, social organization, and environment. With practices dating back thousands of years, these communities have developed unique agricultural systems that promote biodiversity and soil health. Staple crops and livestock provide resources. Agriculture is culturally significant, embedded in spiritual beliefs. However, these practices face challenges like land rights issues, climate change, loss of knowledge, and limited market access. So, future directions involve promoting sustainable practices, advocating for land rights, providing training, and supporting market access to preserve cultural heritage and resilience. So for the farming and agriculture, there are also key points. So first is the traditional farming practices. Farming practices are rooted in traditional knowledge, emphasizing sustainable methods. Communities engage in slash and burn, supporting biodiversity and reducing erosion. Indigenous farmers cultivate diverse crops, ensuring food security. Their interconnectedness with ecosystems allows adaptation to climate change. So, indigenous farmers use time tested methods rooted in their ancestral knowledge, emphasizing sustainability. This includes practices like controlled slash and burn or kaingin or intercropping, which help maintain biodiversity, prevent soil erosion, and ensure food security by cultivating diverse crops. Next is the community land management. Land is perceived as a shared resource. This emphasizes collective responsibility, allowing communities to work together. Engaging in communal activities strengthens social ties. External pressures threaten these systems, emphasizing the need for land rights. For indigenous communities, land is seen as a shared resource, so not just individual property. This encourages collective responsibility and cooperation in managing the land sustainably, strengthening social bonds. However, external pressures often threaten these communal systems, highlighting the critical need for the land rights recognition. Another key point is diversification of crops. Crop diversification enhances food security and resilience. By cultivating multiple varieties, communities mitigate risk of crop failure. This supports biodiversity and soil health. Pressures from monoculture farming threaten these ecosystems. So instead of growing just one type of crop, indigenous farmers cultivate many different varieties. This strategy is crucial for enhancing food security and resilience, as it reduces the risk of widespread crop failure and supports overall biodiversity and soil health. The next one is indigenous agricultural knowledge and practices. Agricultural knowledge encompasses cultivation and understanding of ecosystems. This knowledge informs farming practices, allowing effective management. Techniques reflect centuries of wisdom. Preserving this knowledge is essential. Indigenous agricultural knowledge and practices refers to the deep, accumulated knowledge about farming and understanding ecosystems that indigenous communities have developed over centuries. This knowledge guides their farming methods, allowing them to manage their environment effectively and sustainably, and preserving this wisdom is essential for their future. The next is the barriers of modernization and support. Indigenous farmers encounter barriers to modernization. Limited access to resources restricts their ability to improve yields. Inadequate infrastructure complicates efforts to sell products. Addressing barriers requires targeted support. Indigenous farmers often struggle to access modern farming technologies, resources, and infrastructure. This limits their ability to increase their yields or easily sell their products. So addressing these barriers requires targeted support that respects their traditional ways while offering new opportunities. The next one is the cultural significance of agriculture. Agriculture is intertwined with cultural identity and spiritual beliefs. Traditional practices are accompanied by rituals that honor the land. This connection underscores sustainable practices. Modernization threatens this significance. So for these communities, agriculture is not just about producing food. It's deeply woven into their cultural identity and spiritual beliefs. So traditional practices are often accompanied by rituals that honor the land and spirits, reinforcing their connection to nature and sustainable practices. Next one is the impact of climate change. Climate change presents a challenge affecting traditional methods and food security. Shifts in weather can disrupt production. Communities may need to adapt practices. Strengthening capacity to respond will be essential. Climate change poses a significant threat as shifts in weather patterns directly affect their traditional farming methods and food security. Communities must adapt their practices and strengthen their capacity to respond to these environmental challenges to ensure their survival. Another one is economic contributions of indigenous farming. Farming contributes to local economies, supporting both subsistence and market production. By cultivating diverse crops, farmers enhance food systems and generate income. External market pressures can undermine these efforts. So farming done by indigenous communities plays a significant role in their local economies. It helps them meet their own needs for food and also allows them to sell surplus produce in local markets, generating income for their families. By growing a variety of crops, They strengthen the overall food system and provide economic stability. However, they can negatively affected by external market pressures, such as a cheap imports or unfair price for their goods, which can undermine their efforts. Another one is the access to land and land rights. Access to land is a fundamental issue, impacting their ability to farm sustainably. Many face challenges to their land rights. Advocacy for land rights is crucial for empowering communities. So, having secure access to land is absolutely fundamental for indigenous communities, as it directly impacts their ability to farm and live sustainably. Many indigenous groups face ongoing challenges to their land rights, including encroachment from large scale businesses, land grabbing, or lack of legal recognition for their ancestral domains. Advocacy for land rights, meaning actively supporting and fighting for their legal claim to their traditional lands. It is crucial for empowering these communities to protect their heritage and ensure their livelihood. And the last but not the least, the role of government and NGO support. Government and NGOs are vital in supporting agricultural initiatives, offering resources and advocacy. Programs focusing on sustainable agriculture can enhance productivity. Support must recognize autonomy and respect practices. So both the government and non-government organization or NGO play a vital role in supporting indigenous agricultural initiatives. They can offer valuable resources like tools or seeds, training on the sustainable techniques, and advocacy, helping to protect their rights. Programs that focus on sustainable agriculture can significantly enhance productivity and improve livelihoods. However, it's crucial that this support is provided in a way that truly recognizes their autonomy, their right to self-governance, and respect their traditional practices, rather than imposing outside methods that might not fit their culture and environment.
Fishing practices. Fishing practices among Philippine indigenous communities are vital for their livelihoods, cultural identity, and social structures, reflecting a deep understanding of aquatic ecosystem developed over thousands of years. So, key points of fishing practices. First is traditional fishing techniques. Includes net fishing, spear fishing, basket traps, and the use of traditional boats, which reflect an intricate understanding of local water bodies and fish behaviors. It encompasses a wide array of methods that have been adapted over centuries to local ecosystem and cultural contexts. So indigenous communities kay mag-use sila methods like net fishing, spear fishing, basket traps, and traditional boats. Kani kay mag-reflect sa ilang deep knowledge about water bodies and fish behaviors na na-adapt to local ecosystem over centuries. So next is cultural significance of fishing. Fishing holds profound cultural significance for many indigenous communities in the Philippines, deeply intertwined with their heritage and identity. Fishing activities are often accompanied by spiritual beliefs, with ritual performed to honor sea spirits and ensure a bountiful catch, fostering communal ties as families collaborate in fishing expeditions. So fishing is not only for livelihoods para sa mga indigenous communities, kay it also carries spiritual and cultural meaning. So they perform often ritual to honor sea spirits, and fishing expeditions strengthen family and community ties. So next is we have community-based resource management. So indigenous communities often engage in these practices that promotes collective oversight and sustainable usage of fishing grounds. It facilitates cooperations among community members, where fishers establish rules for allowance such as seasonal fishing and size limitations to prevent overfishing and ensuring the long-term viability of marine resources. So, indigenous communities practice collective oversight by setting rules such as seasonal bans and size limitation. Kay para ma-ensure nila nga dili na mahurot dito ang ug dili ma-overfishing ang ilang ginabuhat ug ma-sustain ang fishing and the long-term health of marine resources. So next is impact of external pressures. The fishing practices increasingly threatened by external pressures, including industrial fishing, environmental degradation, and commercial exploitation, which harm fish stocks and local ecosystems. Illegal fishing and taking over on traditional fishing grounds worsen the situation, leading to conflicts and reduce the ability to manage resource sustainability. To address these issues, it's essential to advocate for indigenous rights and implement policies protecting traditional fishing practices and habitats. So next is economic contribution of fishing. So fishing is a critical economic activity for indigenous communities in the Philippines, providing employment, income, and food security. It boosts local markets and revenue, with additional supplemental activities like fish processing, drying, and selling handcrafted gear, providing further economic benefits. Despite challenges like fluctuations and limited markets, supporting traditional fishing practices is essential for promoting sustainable livelihoods in these communities. So, fishing provides food securities na makakuha po sila income o employment. It also supports local markets and related activities like fish processing and gear making. So, next is challenges of modernization and access to market. Indigenous fishing practices are vital for community sustenance, but modernization and market barriers hinder economic growth. Limited access to markets, poor transport and storage facilities, and lack of business training restrict fishers' opportunities. Expanding market access, improving infrastructure, and offering capacity building programs are key to supporting their long-term economic viability. So indigenous fishers often struggles with limited market access. Expanding opportunities and improving facilities are key to sustaining their economic growth. So next is environmental sustainability and conservation. Indigenous fishing practices support environmental sustainability through traditional knowledge, selective fishing, and habitat preservation. Yet modern threats like populations, habitat loss, and climate change undermine these efforts, highlighting the needs to integrate indigenous practices into wide conservation policies. So indigenous fishing promotes sustainability through selective methods and habitat protection. However, population, habitat loss, and climate change pose serious threats that must be addressed. So next is impact of climate change. Climate change threatens indigenous fishing by altering fish populations, migratory patterns, and ecosystem health. Rising temperatures, ocean acidification, and extreme weather reduce yields and disrupt traditions, putting food security at risk. Building resilience requires combining traditional knowledge with scientific research to create adaptive strategies that honor culture while addressing modern challenges. So climate change alters fish populations, migratory patterns, and ecosystem, reducing fields and threatening traditions. Combining traditional knowledge with science can help build resilience. So next is integrational knowledge transfer. So passing down traditional fishing knowledge is vital for sustaining indigenous culture and livelihoods. Elders teach younger generation through hands-on practice, storytelling, and community gatherings, preserving skills and values. Yet modernization and urbanization threaten this transfer, making it essential to actively engage youth and strengthen cultural heritage. So, fishing practices should pass down by generation to generation. Kaya para mapadayon gihapon ang unsay traditional nga fishing practices nila. So, next is advocacy for indigenous fishing rights. Advocating for indigenous fishers' rights is vital to protect traditional practice and ensuring sustainability. Many face legal and systemic barriers to accessing fishing grounds, making policy support and legal recognition is essential. Involving communities in decision making empowers them to manage resources, preserving heritage, and shape their future. So, advocating for indigenous rights, ensuring fair access to fishing grounds, and protection of traditions. Involving communities in decision making empowers them to manage resources and preserve their heritage. So, next topic is handicrafts and artisanships. Handicrafts and artisanship are central to the cultural identity and livelihoods of Philippine indigenous communities, showcasing heritage through weaving, pottery, wood carving, basketry, and metalwork. These crafts preserve traditions, convey cultural stories, and support local economies through tourism and trade. However, globalization, modernization, and limited resources threaten their sustainability. Promoting sustainable practices, providing training, and expanding fair trade opportunities are key to preserving these traditions for future generations. So, key points of handicrafts and artisanships. First is cultural significance of handicrafts. Handicrafts among Philippine indigenous communities are vital expressions of cultural identity, history, and values. Textiles, pottery, carving, and jewelry embody unique traditions, stories, and spiritual meaning while passing knowledge across generations. More than economic goods, these crafts strengthen identity and preserve cultural narratives. So handicrafts like weaving, pottery, carving, and jewelry preserve cultural identity and stories. They are symbols of traditions, values, and creativity passed across generations. So next is economic contributions and livelihood. Handicraft productions is a key livelihood for indigenous peoples, supporting both households and communities while preserving cultural traditions. Crafts with local and export potentials generate income and can fund communal projects. The rise of e-commerce also allows artisans to reach wider markets, strengthening both economic opportunities and the cultural value of traditional crafts in today's global economy. So, handicrafts productions kay gasupport sa ni sa ilang households kay makakwarta sila ni through mamaligya sila sa mga ginama nga handicrafts like basketry or weaving. So, next is traditional techniques and skills. Indigenous handicrafts highlights traditional techniques such as weaving, wood carving, and use of natural materials like bamboo, rattan, and plant fibers. These skills passed down through generation preserve cultural heritage while promoting sustainability through the use of renewable resources. Handicrafts not only reflect creativity but also embody the deep cultural and environmental values of indigenous communities. Artisans use skills such as weaving, wood carving, and natural materials crafting. These techniques promote sustainability and showcase deep cultural heritage. Through weaving, wood carving, and natural material crafting, kay maka-showcase sila sa ilahang cultural heritage. So next is market challenges and exploitations. Though handicrafts offer economic potential, indigenous artisans face challenges like limited capital, lack marketing skills, and competition from mass-produced goods. Exploitations by middlemen also threatens fair income. Supportive measures such as fair trade, cooperatives, and training are needed to ensure sustainability and equitable compensations. So artisans face obstacles like low capital, lack of marketing, and competition from mass-produced goods. Middlemen also exploit them, reducing fair income. So next is role of cooperatives and community organizations. Supports indigenous artisans by pooling resources, sharing knowledge, and marketing crafts collectively to strengthen bargaining power. They also provide training, workshops, and business development, helping artisans improve productions and adapt to modern markets while preserving traditions, practices, and fostering community solidarity. So cooperatives helps artisans by pooling resources, marketing collectively, and providing training. This strengthens bargaining power and supports sustainable productions. So next is contemporary influence and adoptions. Indigenous artisans adapt traditional crafts to modern consumers' preferences, blending cultural integrity with contemporary designs. This balance of tradition and innovation shows resilience, but adaptations must be thoughtful to preserve the essence and stories of the crafts. Many artisans blend traditions design with modern taste. They allow crafts to stay relevant while still preserving cultural meaning. So, ang mga artisans kay ilang i-blend ang traditional designs of modern taste kay para relevant sa mga tao o ganahan sila mamalit while preserving their cultural meaning. So next is tourism and cultural exchange. Tourism provides opportunities for indigenous communities to showcase and sell handicrafts, fostering cultural exchange and income. However, it must be managed sustainably to avoid commodification, with communities empowered to control how their crafts are presented and sold. So tourism creates opportunities to showcase and sell crafts, fostering cultural exchange and income. However, it must be managed to avoid exploitation or loss of authenticity. So next is environmental sustainability. Indigenous handicrafts reflect environmental sustainability through the use of natural, locally sourced material and eco-friendly methods. By adopting sustainable practices, artisans uphold cultural values, protect the environment, and appeal to eco-conscious market. Handicrafts rely on natural, renewable materials and eco-friendly methods. This reflects indigenous respects for the environmental and sustainable resource use. So next is intellectual property rights and cultural appropriation. Protecting indigenous handicrafts through intellectual property rights is vital as their design gain popularity in global markets. Without safeguards, cultural appropriation can occur, with others profiting from traditional works without recognition of fair compensation. Strong legal frameworks are needed to protect artisans' rights, preserve cultural integrity, and ensure communities benefit from their heritage. So protecting crafts through intellectual property rights prevents exploitation and cultural appropriation. This ensures artisans gains recognition and fair benefits. So the last one is future prospects and empowerment initiatives. Empowering indigenous artisans through training, technology, and market support is key to sustaining handicrafts. Teaching business skills using digital tools and fostering collaboration can expand markets and encourage innovation while preserving cultural heritage and providing economic opportunities. So training, technology, and market supports can empower artisans. By building skills and expanding opportunities, crafts can be preserved while ensuring sustainable livelihoods. So that's all. Thank you.